Namaste, everybody. So, welcome to the fourth session of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. As I've done in the past, I'll just recap what we have covered earlier. Uh, First is the background of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra itself. Yoga in ancient times had spread across many texts of the Upanishads and the Tantric Agamas. And Rishi Patanjali felt the need to put its central essence in one place. And that is how the Yoga Sutra got written. It's one of the most amazing texts from ancient India. It's extremely scientific. There is no belief required. There is no theism overlaying the practice at all. And the definitions are very precise. The process is well delineated, and the results are clearly indicated. It says, if you do this, this will happen. So you don't need to believe anything, just follow, do this, and this will happen. That's why it's a extremely scientific text. So in the first talk, we talked about how Patanjali defines yoga. Most people define yoga as some sort of a joining of individual consciousness with universal consciousness, Atman with Brahman. Yoga defines it as realizing that you are Purusha. But Patanjali defines it as stopping the modification of the mind. It's a very precise definition. The way the mind works is that all the time we are getting stimulus from outside. So we see a rose, and the mind reflects the rose. The mind modifies itself into a rose, and Purusha or Atman lights up that reflection. So then we know it's a rose. So because the stimulus is never ending, the mind is always disturbed. The mind is always being modified from one modification to another modification to another modification. And therefore, we know of consciousness only by becoming conscious of something. So I'm conscious of the rose, I'm conscious of this thought, I'm conscious of this feeling, I'm conscious of this pain in my knee. So that is how we experience consciousness. But when the modification of the mind is stopped, what Patanjali calls chitta vritti nirodha, when the vrittis are stopped, then the underlying consciousness itself becomes visible to us. And that, he says, is the definition of yoga. Then he says that there are 5 categories of modification of the mind, 5 categories of vrittis. One is right knowledge. We see a rose and the knowledge we get in, it's a rose. One is wrong knowledge. We see a rope, but the knowledge which goes into the mind is a snake. Then the third is imaginary knowledge. We see a film in which they are depicting hobbits, which is imaginary characters. So there's no, the mind is taking in a hobbit, but there's no corresponding character in real life. Or no knowledge, as in deep sleep. The mind, the consciousness focused on no knowledge, because there is no vritti, there's no thought, no objects. So no knowledge is also a vritti. And finally, past knowledge, because our memory is keeps popping up knowledge. So the 5 categories of vrittis are right knowledge, wrong knowledge, imaginary knowledge, no knowledge, and past knowledge. Then he says that the way to stop these vrittis is abhyasa and vairagya. Abhyasa is practice, and he defines it in 3 ways. One is that it has to be sustained. Second, it has to be uninterrupted. And third, it has to be done with devotion, right? And if you do this continuously, do the abhyasa, then vairagya develops. Vairagya is a sort of non-attachment. You are not attached to, you are detached from the objects of pleasure. You also detached from the disgust of objects of pain. So disgust and pleasure have complete same meaning to a yogi. Yogi is not elated by pleasure nor depressed by disgust. It's the same meaning to a yogi. So that is vairagya. So if by abhyasa and vairagya, you stop the vrittis. So far, Patanjali has talked about the negative aspect. That means there are vrittis, and vrittis stop you from, getting a direct access to your consciousness or Atman or Purusha. And these are the vrittis. This is how you stop vrittis. So these are all the negative aspects. The positive aspect, when you do all this, then the positive is samadhi. So what is samadhi is the content of today's talk. And in the next few talks also, we will continue the discussion on samadhi, right? So it's a very important aspect, samadhi. All of us have some idea of what samadhi is, but here we will define it a little more precisely. So let me just share my screen, and I will be covering these two shlokas today. Just a minute. Yeah. So we will be covering these two shlokas today. So one shloka says, Vitark, Vichar, Ananda, Asmita, Rupa Anugamat, Sampragnata. So we will be discussing, there are two types of samadhis. One is Sampragnata Samadhi, and don't worry about the term just now, I'll explain it to you. And the other is Asampragnata Samadhi, and I will explain that to you as well. So Sampragnata Samadhi is basically samadhi with the mind, and it is accompanied progressively by reason, reflection, bliss, and ego, sense of individuality, sense of I-ness. Okay, this is Sampragnata. Don't worry about it just now. I know it is. This aspect, what I'm going to talk about today, is very experiential. It is very difficult to understand in theory. So I'm pre-warning everybody that it's very difficult to understand this, and I'm going to explain it as simply as I can. All right. This is Sampragnata Samadhi. Sampragnata Samadhi, samadhi with mind. With practice, the mental activity ceases. That means the mind stops. When that happens, it is Asampragnata Samadhi. That means samadhi without the mind. In this state, the mind is retained only in traces. So these are two shlokas I'll be talking about. The second shloka is Virama Pratyaya Abhyasa Purva Samskara Syoso Naya. So these are two shlokas I'll be covering today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to this. All right. So as I said, Sampragnata Samadhi is samadhi with the mind. So here I want to introduce the concepts of dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So, normally the word meditation is used as just one word, but in the Yoga Sutra, meditation has many steps. Pratyahara is the first step of meditation. Then you go to dharana, then you go to dhyan, and then you go to samadhi. And there's one step ahead of that called samyama, which we'll cover later. All right. So it's a very nicely elongated explanation. All right. So what happens in dharana is we are training the mind to concentrate on one object or on one thought or on one image, because normally our mind flits. You notice yourself just now, you're listening to me, but you're thinking of your dinner or something you have not done, so all those thoughts are together. Mind is chanchal. हमारा दिमाग जो है चंचल है, तो वो चंचल दिमाग से we cannot go into dharana dhyana. तो उसके लिए we have to train the mind to be single pointed, to focus on one thing with effort. So that focusing on one thing and able to exclude everything else is dharana. Now, as you focus on one thing, a time can come where there's a sudden shift into dhyana, where the focusing, you were making a lot of effort, now it's effortless. So it just, your consciousness is flowing uninterrupted without any effort to that object. So your consciousness, which was very concentrated and full of effort, is now become diffused, is become absolutely easy. So, you know, in using cricket terminology, there are batsmen who report that they were in the zone. You know, they were like concentrating on their playing and whatever, and then suddenly there was a shift and they were in the zone, because then the whole game came very effortlessly to them. So dhyana is somewhat like that, right? Samadhi, on the other hand, is, so concentration is, dharana is you're concentrating on an object. Dhyana is that the object is there, but you're concentrating more on the stream of consciousness flowing to the object. In samadhi, the object is dropped, the mind is dropped, and only that consciousness remains, and you're absorbed in that consciousness. So that is samadhi, right? So really, the definition of samadhi, to understand the definition of samadhi, you have to go into the 4 states of the mind which we covered. We said there is a waking state of the mind, there is a dream state of the mind, there is a deep sleep state of the mind, and there is a transcendental state of the mind. So in the waking state of the mind, the objects, outside objects, are also present, and your mind is also working. Your senses are working and your mind is working. So your consciousness, the patterns on your consciousness are both of outside stimulus as well as your inner thoughts. Both are there as a pattern on your consciousness, right? When you go to sleep and you're in a dream state, then your senses fold up and only the mind is, but the mind is functioning. So what you're experiencing is your subconscious thoughts. So only thoughts are there, right? So the pattern on your consciousness is thoughts, is your subconscious thoughts. In the deep sleep state, even the mind folds up. So there is no object. So there's no object and there's no thought. There's no content. But we are not aware of it because we are in deep sleep. The only way we get aware of it when you wake up in the morning, you say, "Bahut sakoon ka neend soya, bahut chain se soye." So you have this feeling that you're blissful, because when there's no content in the mind, there's no thought, no object, nothing. The mind is absolutely still and quiet. Or kya hota hai? You're just in a state of ananda and bliss, but you don't know it because you were like in deep slumber. You were not conscious of your sleep. And there is a 4th state, which is the transcendental state. So in all these 3 states we talked about, there's a pattern of the consciousness. The pattern of objects and thoughts, pattern of thoughts, pattern of no thoughts. And in the transcendental state, which is called Turiya, it's only pure consciousness. All these patterns have stopped, the mind has been destroyed, and only pure consciousness remains. So that is Turiya. So reaching Turiya is Samadhi, according to Patanjali. So when a sadhaka gets into this dharana, dhyana, samadhi, this practice of sadhana, he or she has to focus on something. He or she has to focus on a mantra. For example, Om, Soham, Aham Brahmasmi, Shivoham, whatever the Guru, a mantra which the Guru gives you, you focus on the mantra. Or you focus on a roop, the roop of your Ishta Devta or Devi, the roop of a yantra, right? Or you focus on a roop like just your breathing, you're breathing in, breathing out, you're focusing on something. Now, it is often said that, why do you need to focus? Because God is formless. God to nirakar hai. So akar nahi hai. So why do you have to focus on akar to reach there? So a good way to understand this is a child learning to ride a bicycle has trainer wheels. But once he or she learns to ride it, then the wheels are removed. So our mind cannot straight away focus on nirakar. It has to reach there. So the initial training has to be with akar. And what is that akar? It's either a mantra or a rupa, right? So that is why a mantra or a rupa is chosen to start your sadhana. And once you choose a mantra or a rupa and you start focusing on that, the process moves in four. So this, sorry, just before that, excuse me. This mantra or rupa on which you focus in sadhana is the support or the basis of the mind. Otherwise, the mind is very chanchal. So you are now focusing it. But to focus it, you need one support. As we discussed, that you cannot go into nirakar sadhana straight away. So that support is called pratyaya in Sanskrit. So the mind needs a pratyaya to focus on. And this focus moves in 4 steps, in 4 stages. And I'll again say it's very difficult to understand. I'll try to explain it as simply as possible. The stages are vitark, vichar, ananda, asmita. There are 4 stages with the same object, just the mantra om or the mental image of your guru or your ishtadeta, Shiva Linga, whatever you are focusing on. But it moves in 4 stages. Vitarka is loosely translated into English as reasoning. Vichar is loosely translated as reflection. Ananda is actually translated as bliss. And asmita is the sense of I-ness, the ego sense. And I will cover all of these. So to get to vitarka, you have to understand it. There are 3 levels, 3 layers of thinking. Vitarka is basically thinking, reasoning, thinking. So one level is called kutark. Kutark is negative thoughts. Now, because the world is full of duality, this and that, and polarity, negative, positive. So in anything you can find a negative. So you look at a beautiful bush of roses, and you can concentrate on the thorns and not on the roses. It's possible. So in any situation, you look at in your own life, any situation, there's a positive and there's a negative. And the mind which always focuses on the negative is indulging in what is called kutar. And a person who always focuses on the negative is trapped in the dark alleys of life and living. All right. So that is kutar. Then, so that is negative. And then on the neutral level, you have tark. Tarka is basically logic. Now, logic is a very fine thing in our daily lives, in our everyday life, to use logic to take very good decisions, to move forward, is an extremely good tool. But logic is rooted in duality, in this and that. And logic cannot fathom this and that unified into one, which is the reality. When you go to Purusha, Brahman, the reality is this and that have merged into one whole. That logic cannot, with logic, we cannot reach that. Thoughts cannot reach that. So there's some saying in, I think, Taittiriya Upanishad, which says, words cannot reach me. Brahman is saying, words cannot reach me. Words bounce back from me. That means logic cannot reach the truth. That is at the very core of Indian spirituality and philosophy. That to know the truth, you must develop your intuitive insight, your Atma Darshan, your yogic power to be able to comprehend the truth, because thinking will not take you there. So logic, very good for everyday life, extremely important tool, but otherwise, for reaching the spiritual truth, you have to go beyond logic. You have to break the chain of logic and go beyond that. Now, Vitarka is a very, very interesting concept. Uh, Thinking, this whole tarka is basically regurgitating your past experience. All your past experience stored inside you in your mind, and that is getting regurgitated. So it is whenever you see something and think about it, your past conditioning and past experience is getting projected on that. So that is thinking. So no new knowledge can come in. But in sadhana, this whole reasoning about the object, thinking about the object, if you're concentrating on your breath, thinking how the breath is going in and coming out, what's happening, what kind of sensations I'm getting. So that is thinking. But as a sadhak meditates, that thinking stops. And what happens is that person is purely observing, pure observation. The mind has stopped projecting its conditioning, its thoughts on that object. And consciousness is purely observing that concept, right? So that is basically vitark. Now, vitark can ripen into vichar. So when the mind has become totally purely observing the object, then the object's knowledge can reflect on the mind, because then there is no, the mind's conditioning and thoughts are not blocking that reflection. So the object is reflecting on the mind. That is what we mean when we say I'm contemplating, I'm very contemplative today, or I'm reflecting. Basically, your thoughts have stopped, and the knowledge of the object is seeping into you. So that is reflection. That is vichar. And vichar can then mature into ananda. Now, why is that? So when the mind becomes reflective, a time will come when there are no thoughts. And as we saw that in deep sleep state, when there are no thoughts, although we don't experience it because we are asleep, but we wake up in the morning saying, bahut maja aaya, acha neend aaya. So now imagine in sadhana, you are getting into the deep sleep state consciously, so to say. So there are no thoughts, and because there are no thoughts, almost no objects. So the feeling is that of ananda or bliss. And that bliss can then ripen into egolessness. That means you lose the sense of your individuality. Now here there's something very interesting. So there are 3 levels of the ego. So first level is like everyday, in our everyday lives, the lower ego, the individual ego, which is the ego which says, I'm superior to somebody else, or I'm inferior to somebody else. I've done this very well, or I couldn't do this very well. So this whole I am the doer, I am great, others are not great, or the reverse, that I am not great, others are great. These are all the everyday individual ego. You can call it ahamkar. Then in sadhana, you transcend all this, and then you get to an ego which is not ahamkar, it's very neutral ego. It's called asmita. The neutral ego is just the sense that I am. It's an amness. It's just I am. There's no competitiveness about this ego. And then at some stage in samadhi, even that is transcended, and which is really what is moksha or kaivalya in yoga. So to summarize this, sampragnata samadhi is samadhi with the instrument of the mind. The mind to be there needs a support. Without support, there'll be no mind. Without thoughts, there is no mind. Without objects, there is no mind. All right. So it needs a support. That support is called pratyaya. The pratyaya can be either a roop or a mantra, right? And as the sadhaka progresses in his sadhana, in the samadhi state, initial stages are Vitark, which is moving from thinking to observation, then Vichar, which is moving from observation to reflection, then Ananda, which is in the reflective mode, thoughts completely go away and what is left is just bliss, right? And in that bliss, there's a movement from Ahamkar to Asmita to transcendence of the ego, right? So this is Sampragnata Samadhi. Sampragnata Samadhi, Samadhi with the mind. Asampragnata Samadhi is called Viram Pratyaya. That means the object Viram ho gaya. Object is khatam ho gaya. Object is negated, ceases. So in Asampragnata Samadhi, the mental activity ceases completely. And the mind remains only in traces. What the traces I'll discuss, but it ceases completely. And therefore, Asampragnata Samadhi is Samadhi without the mind. All right. But Asampragnata Samadhi is also not a stable Samadhi. It is unstable. It can shift back. So, the high end of each is when the thinking transforms to observation, where the thoughts stop and you're just observing the object. That is Asampragnata Samadhi in the Vitark form, right? Now, from there are two possibilities. The sadhak can slip back to thinking or get pushed into reflection, the next one, the next stage, which is vichar. No, so the vichar starts with observation and then it becomes pure reflection. That means the truth of the object is seeping into your mind. So the very evolved yogis, people who have attained nirvana, they say, if you can see a rose as it is, you can see a rose as it is from a yogic vision, then the rose will reveal the whole universe to you. The whole universe will be revealed in the rose. So you have completely blocked all thought, all conditioning, and in that consciousness, the truth has the power to seep in. You have given permission to the truth of the rose to seep inside of you, right? So that again is Asampragnata Samadhi, that is because you have shut the mind out at that moment. And from there, again, you can slip back from reflection to observation state, or you can slip up, you can go up to the bliss state, right? And bliss and this I've discussed. So every time the higher end of Sampragnata Samadhi in each Vitar, Vichar, Anand and Asmita is Asampragnata, because in that moment, momentarily, the mind has ceased to exist. Okay, so that is Asampragnata Samadhi. So basically, Sampragnata Samadhi is Samadhi with a support. Asampragnata Samadhi is Samadhi without the support. The support is gone. So you are meditating on Om and you reach a certain level where Om has vanished and only the consciousness remains. Only the flow of consciousness remains. So that is Asampragnata Samadhi, but it's not stable, as I said, it will slip. All right. Now, there is another concept to know that, in this Samadhi, even Asampragnata Samadhi, the consciousness is not still. It's not completely still. It's not. There is a dynamism in the consciousness. So as a meditator, one can experience that there's a movement going on. So there's energy moving either in a spiral motion or in a wavy motion. There's some movement going on in that consciousness. There's no thought, but there's a movement. So, and that movement is from where it's coming from? It's coming from an underground current. And the underground current is coming from what is called samskar. Now, what is samskar? So, the theory of karma is that we have desires. A desire will propel us into an action to fulfill that desire. And whatever the outcome of that action is, gets kind of, there's an impression left in the consciousness. That impression is samskar. And that samskar gives us our character. That samskar gives us our future karmas, right? So that samskars are still there. We have a prarabdha karma, and there are karmas which are still there from all the past action we have taken in this life and all our previous lives. So that samskar is still there, and that samskar is creating some kind of a motion in consciousness. So thoughts have gone, objects have gone, but samskar is present. So this is called sabij samadhi. That means samadhi with seed. The seed of samskar is still present. What can you do about it? Nothing, because the mind is not there. You have already, transcended the mind. So there's nothing to work on. So you just wait. The sadhak then just waits and lets his samskars flow through, just like a river, without stopping it. And once the samskars flows through, then you attain nirbheet samadhi. That means samskars have also gone. Then you are like completely merged in the stillness of consciousness, whatever that state is. Nobody has come back from there to tell you what it is. So that is what is called moksha, right? So now this is a sadhak experience. Now from this knowledge, what it is that we can do in our everyday life. We should always think that, okay, fine, this is very high funda knowledge and all that, but what do we do with it? First is, this talk and even the previous talk, I have said Patanjali has given so much emphasis on abhyasa, and abhyasa has got 3 elements. One is uninterrupted practice. One is, long duration of practice. And one is practice with devotion, with surrender, right? So this whole abhyasa, if you understand, you can apply it to anything which you want in life, anything which you want to achieve in life. If you follow this knowledge of abhyasa, so our Shastra has given us the knowledge of abhyasa. If you can use this knowledge, forget, you may not want to be a yogi, but you want to achieve something in your life, achieve wealth, for example, in your life, or whatever it is that you want, happiness, whatever it is that you want. You can use this knowledge of abhyasa and go after it. Just long duration, uninterrupted, and with devotion, and you will get the result. You can see it in the field of sports. You can see the top sports people. You can, in tennis, in cricket, in badminton, anyway, you can see the amount of emphasis these sports people give on practice. Even a top badminton player like the girl from Hyderabad, I forget her name, whatever her name is, the world champion, the amount of practice she puts in. Abhyasa is one lesson you can take out. Forget about samadhi and all if it's too high at the moment, but just to apply it for whatever it is that you want to achieve in your life. That is one. Second is, you can take out from here how to develop concentration. So the knowledge is that our minds are chanchal. That means we cannot keep it focused on one thing. So you are listening to this talk and you're thinking of 3 other things, right? But we all know that as a student, as a worker, as anything, if you want to really do a good job of what you're doing, then you need to concentrate. And here it is telling you how to develop that concentration. Sit and train yourself to concentrate on one thing. Start with just 5 minutes. Just focus on your breath going in, as it goes in, how your chest expands, abdomen expands, and your breath going out, how everything contracts and the breath is coming out. As you're breathing in, it's like warm on your nostril, cold on your nostril. When you're breathing out, it's warm. So, but train your mind to focus on one thing. And it is something you can do yourself. Start with just 5 minutes a day, even less, 2 minutes a day. Sit in the morning and train your mind. And slowly, you will see the result. You train yourself, train your mind, and do abhyas. Uninterrupted, long duration, with devotion, with complete faith that this will work, right? So developing concentration is something we can take out from this course. Third thing, very important, that reflect on this, contemplate on this, the difference between thinking and observation. Thinking is basically, there's no new knowledge in thinking. All the experience which is stored inside you is getting the right stimulus, and that stored memory is getting reflected. So thinking is purely projection of your mind on an object. Your mind is projecting something. This is good, this is bad. Your value judgments, your conditioning, your past experience is all being very simple example. Some people are afraid of dogs. They have had a bad experience as a child, some dog bit them. And you go to somebody's house and the dog is a very friendly little creature. But the mind is projecting this dog is dangerous. So it's not projecting the right knowledge. It's projecting wrong knowledge. It's not projecting that there's a rope on the road. It's projecting the snake over there. All right. So thinking and observation is when there's no thinking. And when you observe something, then just pure observation. When there's pure observation, then only you're capable of getting new ideas, creativity. You get the real knowledge when you observe. So this distinction with thinking and observation, right? So there are many things which you can use a thinking. Should I eat roti or should I eat rice? Think, by all means. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But when you are facing a more deeper problem, why is there this pattern in my life? Why do I always put myself in a position where I get hurt? Okay. Why do I fail in this particular type of task all the time? So when you are seeking answers to or very vexed relationship issues, when you're seeking very vexed questions, you're seeking answers, if you can just observe what's going on, the currents inside you, the answer, what happens is you open a portal, you open a twilight zone, you open it, and higher knowledge can seep in when your mind is absolutely quiet, devoid of thoughts. And then you get answers to all your problems, all the issues which you're facing. Just give it to the universe, quieten your mind, and the answer will seep in. So these are the things which you can take out for everyday life from the discussion on Samadhi. Thank you. Any questions? You can stop the spotlight. We can have everybody on screen. Yeah.
Dr. Sinha, namaskar. This is Ashok Bakshi from Delhi.
Boli, sir.
It was a wonderful talk, as usual. It was a fantastic. Enjoyed very much. The last stage is Samadhi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if somebody reached that place, how long does one stay there? Is there any time frame, or one can float back, or one get stuck?
So from what so the Samadhi has many stages, as I said. There's Sampagranata, Asampagranata, Sabija, Nirbija. So there are different stages of Samadhi. So in the initial stages, you can slip back. And people actually do slip back and then go back, that kind of a thing.
Okay.
But once you achieve the final Samadhi, that means your mind is completely destroyed, you're one with this thing, then you can't slip back. Then you're what Bhagavad Gita calls, you're a Jivan Mukta.
Okay.
You have your body, you have your life, but you are Jivan Mukta. But so in the initial stages, you can slip back.
But the last one, you call it Ananda, or with the blissful, where there's no mind.
You can experience bliss even as in the process.
Okay.
But the last one is even when your samskars are destroyed. That means all your karma is destroyed, is burnt.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't take, then there's no rebirth for you, because there's nothing to come back to. You have completely, that is the goal of spirituality.
Okay.
Your karmas are all burnt, and now you're living with the consciousness of Brahman, of Shiva, of Atman. You're living in that consciousness.
You merged with that.
You're merged. So these very, the people in the Himalayas and the people who have achieved nirvana, Ramana Maharishi, Ramakrishna, I mean, these are some, Vivekananda, these are all people, examples you can think of.
Okay.
So just live with that, but they can still contribute to the world. So for example, Vivekananda, he contributed hugely. Ramakrishna contributed hugely. Okay. So you can still contribute, because then there's no self, there's no ego, nothing. You're just contributing. You're just contributing. So you're completely free to contribute without any fetters, nothing.
Okay.
But that's the final stage. But the initial stages, we talked about vitark, vichar, etc. So all those stages, you can, and in fact, most sadhaks will slip back and go back. Will slip back. Okay, so that's why abhyas is required. Abhyas and vairag is required all the time.
Thank you.
But there's another which we'll cover later, is that when a sadhaka is doing all this, he or she gets a lot of supernatural powers, psychic powers.
Okay.
And some people get caught up in that.
Okay.
Then they fall very badly, because the psychic powers are like side effects.
Okay.
That's not the goal. But
Okay.
you will get the psychic powers, because you're doing something to your chakras and body and all that. So you will get psychic power. But most people will misuse it. That is why one reason why Tantra got a bad name.
Okay.
Because the tantrics who were on that path began misusing it. They didn't have the right frame of mind to go into the practice.
Okay.
But the practice itself is scientific. No? It doesn't discriminate whether you go in with the right bhav or the wrong bhav. The practice will work.
Okay.
So when you go wrong bhav, you get all the powers and you start misusing it. Then you fall so badly. It's like being expelled from school, and never with this thing about you will never go back to school.
Okay.
So then those people are expelled. I mean, they can never go back. So it is a very razor sharp path.
Okay.
A very razor sharp path. You have to develop that kind of purity of mind to be able to do that.
Very thin line.
Very thin line. You're walking a very thin line. So it's got negatives and everything. But the reward is the whole universe is the reward.
Amazing.
You are the universe.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Radha.
Yes, thank you for a most illuminating talk. I'm glad I didn't miss this one. The way you've laid out the aspects of the mind and also the stages of meditation, I had two questions. One was, how do you distinguish between prarthana, prayer, and meditation? And because some of these aspects of concentration, devotion, practice, they apply to both. And many of us who try to do both, is there a convergence? Are there parallel tracks?
Excellent question. Really good question. Okay, so one thing, and here I'm also giving you my opinion, and there could be other opinions as well. Never ask for anything in a prayer, because you're interfering with your karma. Like suppose you were to ask in this prayer, remove this problem in my life, right? So maybe your prayer will be granted. The universe works in a certain way. There's a certain law in which the universe works. So if you ask with the right shraddha and the right intensity, it will come true for you. but you'll suffer it in the next lifetime.
Okay.
All right, you'll suffer it in the next life. So one thing, and there are many opinions in the Shastras which say that जो भी मिल रहा है प्रसाद समझ लो और उसको करो. Because the mostly when we do prayer, he says we ask for something. We ask ye de do, wo de do, kind of a thing, right? So pratna is not about asking. The real bhav of pratna is of surrender, of what is called prapati, right? Or dissolving yourself in God consciousness. You are basically, pratna is used by somebody who is driven by emotions, whose emotions are very strong, right? So he or she finds it very easy to surrender to God, right? So that bhakti which the pratna will generate will open up all this for you. So all this talk which I'm giving you I'm giving you with logic and reason, because we're all educated and we've all gone to schools and colleges and we have good qualifications and we think and we need to know logically and all that. But if I talk to my Guruji, he says, just sadhana karo, do the practice and leave the rest to Yoga Shakti. Let her do her magic. So bhakti is very, very powerful and very, 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 very powerful means of propelling you into the higher levels of spirituality. So that is the real sense of pratna. So there's actually at some level there's no difference between pratna and samadhi. There's no difference actually. But if you at a very low level you're asking things, then do it with at your own risk, as they say. Because it'll come true. Whatever you ask for will happen. If you ask with the right intensity, it will happen.
I think a test of, I may be completely off here, but off the mark here, but sometimes a test of bhakti and pratna is, suppose you're trying to overcome fear or overcome some trepidation, whatever it is, right? The source of your trouble. And you are praying, you are through your pratna, you try to concentrate and you say you ask for something, admittedly. Ask for something and it doesn't come true. If you can still retain that bhakti and say that still there is still the power and maybe it was not meant to happen. Isn't that also a slightly detour, a route or a route into that same convergence that you are talking about?
So these are the dangers. No, these are what you just said. I'm doing pratna to get something, and if I don't get it, it's very transactional pratna.
Yeah.
So fine. The majority of people do that. But here in this particular forum, we are talking about spiritual progress. So in that perspective, most people do what you are suggesting, what you are saying. Ye de do, wo de do. Nahi doge to hum gussa ho jayenge. Doge to hum mandir jayenge aur itna prasad chadhayenge. All that stuff. Most people do that. But
what I'm saying is transcending that stage. Are there stages of are there stages of pratna and bhakti that evolve, that come to you?
Yes.
Maybe you didn't think, therefore you're evil, therefore you do not exist too. I asked for it, I may not have got it, but I know you're there and this is happening for a reason or something like that.
No, there are stages also. And if you study the theistic philosophies of, say, Ramanuja or Madhva, although we are talking about yoga over here, but those are other philosophies, they actually give you the steps of bhakti.
Okay.
So all that is there. I'll separately send it to you.
Okay.
The Ramanuja and Madhva both, they were very upset with Shankara, who made Vedanta very remote. He made God very, very, very abstract and impersonal. And they said, how can we reach that God of yours is unreachable? How have some rehem karo logon ke liye. So then they overlaid it with theism. And when Vedanta criticized them, your philosophy is weak. So what if it's weak? Let it be weak. But people who follow this will reach the same goal as you want to reach in your
The long detour. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So you cannot, you cannot. I mean, bhakti is therefore extremely powerful tool if you use it properly and overcome this initial thing about I'm asking.
The transactional, yeah.
Yeah.
I found your the explanation of mind and thinking, which we are actually almost conditioned to, very interesting, because it is when I have the fact that thinking is actually almost like a projection of what you already know. There's nothing very new in thinking. That was because almost entire Western approach is that
I think therefore I am.
I think Cartesian, yeah.
I think therefore I am.
I think therefore I am.
It is
Cartesian
that.
thinking.
Yeah. No, this is why the West and East can never meet, because they don't think intuition is a proper epistemology, let me say. But without that epistemology, you cannot reach. And you just sent me this thing about the Nobel Prize winner on physics, where we are all holograms. I would love to see. I mean,
I'll send you. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of mathematical equations in that, but I would love to see how he has arrived at that from a scientific point of view, because you cannot arrive at that without your logic. Logic is always this and that. Logic always works in duality. It cannot, if there's nothing, only one.
Where is the logic in it?
Where's the logic in it? It's just one truth, one existence. Where's the logic? Logic cannot work. You have to experience that. So logic will work only if that existence is another object.
Yeah.
But that existence is all encompassing. It covers everything. How can logic work over there? You got to become part of that to know that. And when you become part of that, then there's no logic. Then it's just experience. So the people, they say people who achieve that, they come down and they say nothing. Buddha said nothing. Gautama Buddha, when he was asked, Atman kya hai? Chup. He says, what cannot be said should not be said. What cannot be put in words should not be put in words.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if I'm taking up too much time.
No. You're welcome. Everybody benefits from questions you ask.
The other question is, as someone for someone who practices mantra japa, right? And there's so much distraction. You were earlier speaking about the stages of like pratyahara and dhyana and all those things, right? Can you overlay it with the mantra japa? Meaning the first, the second. I mean, is there a way to
you can, but it's better to follow a guru, a personal guru. Each guru follows a different sampradaya. So, and each sampradaya has its own nuances. So, so it's the short answer to your question is yes, you can, but a guru has to guide. If you just do a japa of a mantra, when the guru gives you a mantra, that mantra is energized.
Yeah.
Right? So if you just want to just learn, then do soham, do om, these are the common things. But here you're just training yourself to get into concentration, to get your mind a little quiet, right? And once that happens, believe me, a guru will arrive for you. You don't have to look. But follow one path. Ramakrishna very famously, he said, लोग इधर गड्ढा खोदते हैं पानी के लिए, 2 फीट खोदा, फिर दूसरा खोदा, फिर तीसरा खोदा, चौथा खोदा, एक खोदते रहो, पानी मिलेगा, सब चीज मिल जाएगा. As they say, if you know what a rose is, you know the whole universe. You don't know the rose and the thorn and the hibiscus and the bird. If you know the rose, everything will be known to
you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Most elucidating and
good to have you on the talk. So come every time.
I think there's one more hand raised, Prajna.
She's my choti sister.
Acha.
We grew up in Jamshedpur together.
Oh wow.
Mukul Bhaiya, she's Roy Auntie's daughter.
Okay.
My Mukul Bhaiya is my cousin from Patanjali.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, please. You were asking something, Ashok Bhai.
Projna, I want to ask. She has raised her hand.
Acha. I'm not used to all this palm showing on. Yes, Projna, tell me.
Yeah, for a moment I was surprised that I am your sister from Jamshedpur. Because as soon as Ashokji said my name, you said, "Oh, she's my sister, little sister." I was like,
no. Sorry, you're talking about Radha.
Yeah, of course, I know, because I was paying attention. So, anyways, yeah, it's very interesting to hear your talk. What I understood from all this is basically you have to be a nice person. You have to be a very good person from inside. So then all these powers which you are talking of, or your not powers, power is supposed to be bad, but all these realizations which you were talking about, for example, the whole universe can be revealed in a rose. Well, I have never followed the thought process in a regimented, systematic way, the way it is laid out in our Shastras. But I have always been a very good person at heart. Like, that much I know. Like, I am a very honest person. And I call people to return their lost things. I don't owe money to people. Like, even if I can get away with it, but I never do that. And this has been always there from before. So what you are saying is very true. I don't know what state I have reached, but I do read things from nature. Like, I can figure out things. I can figure out truths, the way for some reason, I realize a lot of things. So I don't know why it happens. And as you said very rightly, when you pray, you should not ask God for anything. That's what I tell my children also, that do not ask, like, it's not a transaction that God, you give me this, and then I will run to the temple to give you that. So for some reason, I never liked that concept, So it's not that I go to temples or do puja at a certain specific time. Like, who is there to tell me when I should think of God? It does not have to be specific to a festival, or you can think about God all the time, right? So I don't know. I feel I can see the truth in what you are saying to a certain extent, like things coming to you all of a sudden, and listening to your intuition, and truth about situation, people, anything in life being revealed to you. So I am not here to debate or ask you any questions. I am just telling my experience.
Your experience, yes.
Yeah, and even though I did not follow the way it is said you're supposed to follow. For example, I do not have a guru. The reason I do not have a guru is because how do I know who is going to be the right guru for me?
So 1 second.
And as you said that when the guru will materialize in front of
when
you,
you're ready, the guru will
when
come.
You are ready, your teacher will be there in front of you.
And
correct.
So for me, no particular one person is a guru. I consider lot of situations, even nature, even people I don't know, I consider them as guru, because I am humble enough to know, realize that what they are saying is much more wise than what I think of a situation.
Correct.
So I feel that guru necessarily does not need to be one sole individual, living, breathing person. The universe sends you guru. That is my take on it. But I don't know if I am right.
No, you're absolutely right.
I have not read anything.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
That is what I had to say.
Start practicing something or the. Just my humble advice to you. You're
like focus your mind on something.
Yeah. You're absolutely on the right path. You are leading from your whatever you said, a nice, good moral life, which is internally driven, right? And so you think about these things. You learn from everything around you
by observing.
By observing. because I've been through that path myself, if you start practicing something, it will help. So start practicing yoga, for example. Get hold of a yoga teacher, start practicing yoga, join an online class. And once you start on yoga, the yoga shakti, as my guru says, yoga shakti will do its magic. आपको कुछ नहीं करना है, आप खाली वो क्लास में वो हफ्ते में 3 दिन you come and do it, something like that. So whatever path you're on, it will get amplified. That's all.
Ashok Bhaiya, can you read the chat box? I saw a couple of messages over there.
Okay. No, I couldn't find.
Chat में Radha said I missed a bit, so you have replied to that.
अच्छा, वो उधर चैट में मैं अपने उसमें देख रहा था, सॉरी.
Pardon the interruption. There seems to be a question about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's transcendental meditation.
Yeah. Who's
any relation?
Mind.
Okay.
What stood out was how you described and limitation of the thinking mind.
So I think Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was also into Kriya Yoga, so very much part of Patanjali. So it will be in the same this thing.
डीप प्रैक्टिस के ऊपर में
but he
डीप प्रैक्टिस के ऊपर में जो तुम्हारा टॉक हुआ, जो क्वेश्चन आया, एंड तुमने बहुत एम्फसाइज किया इसके ऊपर में. तो एक तुलसीदास का एक कविता याद आया. आई वुड लाइक टू शेयर.
जरूर बताइए.
अब का अगर मीनिंग का होगा तो बताए. करत करत अभ्यास ते जड़िमति होए सुजान. करत करत अभ्यास ते जड़िमति होए सुजान. रस्सी आवत जात ते सिल पर पड़े निशान. मतलब क्लियर है या मैं बताऊं?
थोड़ा बता दीजिए.
कहते हैं कि अभ्यास एक ऐसा चीज है जो कि अचानक कुछ नहीं आता है. उसके लिए प्रयास करना पड़ता है. प्रयास कहाँ से होगा? तो वो अंतरात्मा की आवाज से आएगा, तुम्हारा डिवोशन से आएगा, तुम्हारे वो शक्ति जनरेट करेगा, जब वो प्रयास आएगा. और एक बार प्रयास करोगे तो करत करत अभ्यास से जड़िमति होए सुजान. रस्सी आवत जात तेक. जो अब पुराने लोग जो हैं, अगर किसी ने देखा हुआ कि कुएं के ऊपर में, कुएं के बगल में जो है ना, वो पत्थर रहता है, ईटा से बनाया हुआ रहता है, और रस्सी आने जाने से उसके ऊपर में जो है एक मोटा सा निशान बन जाता है. तो ये कहते हैं जब एक रस्सी एक पत्थर के ऊपर में जो निशान बना सकती है, एक रस्सी आने जाने से पत्थर के ऊपर में निशान बना सकती है, तो अभ्यास से क्या नहीं हासिल हो सकता है.
बिल्कुल करेक्ट.
तो मेरे को वो चीज याद है.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
Very nice. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Very nice.
आज का सेशन जो है,
हम
तो अभी लिसनिंग स्टेज में है, जस्ट बिगिन है. Really I have enjoyed. बहुत अच्छा लगा है.
मेरे गुरुजी बोलते हैं, yoga teaches yoga. You don't teach. Guru doesn't teach. Yoga itself teaches yoga. You do yoga and वही जो करत करके yoga ही teaches yoga.
अभ्यासा.
अच्छा.
Excellent. Very good. Very good.
मैं पैकअप करता हूँ.
चलिए. Thank you very much.
I hope anybody else is asking question. No one is there. So thank you once again for an excellent description of the stages and the aspect of the mind.
Thank you. Thank you.
What stood out was how you described the limitation of the thinking mind held at such a premium and Western rationalist approach. And it was very nice. We enjoyed the Ananda and blissful, almost reaching that stage of Samadhi. And thank you so much for taking out time, Dr. Atul Sinha.
Thank you very much.
Everybody enjoyed, at least I enjoyed the blissful Ananda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Again, yeah.
Namaskara.
Namaskar.
Namaste. Namaste.